Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's devotional. Our thought today is just going to be a real short thought, considering an article that was posted about a week ago. James Webb Space Telescope shows Big Bang didn't happen. The James Webb Space Telescope, also known as JWST, it's basically, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically the replacement for the Hubble telescope. We launched it, 2 or 3 months ago, and it's been, maybe a little bit longer than that, but it's been sending pictures back, awesome pictures of galaxies and stars and such, and it's really cool to see some of this stuff. But there's this article focuses on a statement made by Eric Lerner. Eric Lerner is a well-known anti-Big Bang believer. He doesn't believe the Big Bang ever happened. In fact, he wrote a book in 1992 entitled The Big Bang Never Happened. In fact, we referenced some words from Eric Lerner, Dr. Lerner. I guess it's been a year, maybe more ago, in a daily devotional talking about the Big Bang. And he actually goes through and describes some specific points regarding the science behind the Big Bang and why it doesn't line up or how it doesn't match with what we're seeing in terms of the scientific evidence and so forth. But this is one quote that he's talking about with regard to the pictures being brought back or being sent back by the telescope. To everyone who sees them, the new I'm just going to say telescope, James Webb Space Telescope's it's just a mouthful. The new telescope images of the cosmos are beautifully awe-inspiring, but to most professional astronomers and cosmologists, they are also extremely surprising, not at all what was predicted by theory. In the flood of technical astronomical papers published online since July 12th, which is about since we've started getting pictures from the telescope, the authors report again and again that the images show surprisingly many galaxies. Galaxies that are surprisingly smooth, surprisingly small, and surprisingly old. Lots of surprises and not necessarily pleasant ones. One paper's title begins with the candid exclamation, "Panic." So why do the telescope's images inspire panic among cosmologists? And what theories' predictions are they contradicting? The papers don't actually say. The truth that these papers don't report is that the hypothesis that the telescope's images are blatantly and repeatedly contradicting is the Big Bang hypothesis, which in reality is actually the Big Bang belief, to be honest. A hypothesis, generally speaking, is something you can test in a lab or recreate in some form. Big Bang is more like a belief. That the universe began 14 billion years ago in an incredibly hot, dense state and has been expanding ever since. Keep in mind, we had we looked at an article not too long ago where they've redefined the whole concept of the Big Bang, saying that before the Big Bang there was this entropy effect and then expansion, and then the Big Bang happened, and so they're trying to redefine it, and basically the end result of that article was we can't really possibly know what happened in the beginning other than the fact that there was all this material that expanded very rapidly. We just don't know how. It was basically a big cop-out. But since that hypothesis has been defended for decades as unquestionable truth by the vast majority of cosmological theorists, the new data is causing these theorists to panic. In fact, he quotes Alison Kirkpatrick. "Right now I find myself lying awake at 3 a.m, she says, and wondering if everything I've done is wrong." And there's some more science involved here. There's the book by Eric Lerner, The Big Bang Never Happened. There's some more science being referenced here, but there's an upcoming debate kind of focusing on the Big Bang, and this is kind of how the debate is premised. The Big Bang theory crucially depends on the inflation hypothesis that at the outset the universe expanded many orders of magnitude faster than the speed of light. But experiments have failed to prove evidence of cosmic inflation, and since the theory's inception, it has been beset by deep puzzles. Now, one of its founders, Paul Steinhardt, has denounced the theory as mistaken and scientifically meaningless. Now, to be fair, that doesn't mean that Dr. Steinhardt, or for that matter, Dr. Lerner, are necessarily advocating that God created the heavens and the earth. But what they're doing is they're observing the fact that what they're finding in the scientific observation is not lining up more and more and more so with the Big Bang hypothesis or the Big Bang belief. When you compare this to what we believe in Genesis 1 verse 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. That's what we believe. And when we combine this with some of the principles that we've gained from the book Mind Your Faith by Doyle Moyer, we recognize a fundamental difference of worldview. There are certain individuals who, in they can't possibly comprehend, can't possibly believe in even the potential that there could be an all-powerful God. And therefore, they're constantly looking for means by which to disprove God. They're constantly looking for means to exalt naturalism, the idea that our universe is self-sustaining and that it can explain itself, its own beginning, and so forth. And what's really interesting about this is then you compare that to an individual who at least embraces the possibility that there could be a God. Well, then Genesis 1 isn't so far-fetched. And when you have individuals who have been teaching and preaching, in essence, the Big Bang hypothesis for decades, and ridiculing and ostracizing scientists and, for that matter, people in society who disbelieve or don't believe in the Big Bang hypothesis, they call them ignorant or they call them uneducated or whatever. And now all of a sudden, well, I say all of a sudden, it really hasn't been all of a sudden, but it hasn't been public knowledge or publicly shared often that the Big Bang theory or the Big Bang hypothesis has a lot of problems that it can't explain. And it really is the peak of arrogance to think to oneself that we can possibly know so much, that we can know so much about the universe and what it contains and what it doesn't contain, that we would restrict it from ever having the possibility that an all-powerful God could have created it. And then you have things like the images the telescope's shooting back that show evidence that flies in the face of the Big Bang hypothesis. And it rewrites the whole story for a lot of these scientists. And yet they've been so arrogant as to say an all-powerful God could never, this isn't even possible. And yet when you at least accept the possibility, recognize that you don't know what you don't know, well then Genesis 1 certainly has potential as being fact. And of course you and I certainly do believe that it is fact. In fact, there's more facts in Genesis 1, and certainly nothing to disprove it, compared to the Big Bang belief, which not only is it but a belief, and there's really no basis for it, you have evidence flying to the contrary of it. Well, people can claim, oh, but billions of years old, yada, yada, yada. Okay, can't an all-powerful God create things to be billions of years old? Couldn't he create the universe to be 14 billion years old? If he created Adam and Eve to be mid-aged, or at least maybe in their 20s, however old they were, they weren't newborns. Can't he create the earth to be a certain number of age, certain millions of years old, and the universe 13 billion, 14 billion years old? And we see God, he says, let there be light. There was light. He made the firmament. He calls it heaven. He creates earth here on the third day. He brings about plant life here. And then in verse 14, in the fourth day, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. Let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And so it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. The fourth day is when God made this 14 billion year old universe. He didn't make it 14 billion years ago, but he made it to be 14 billion years old. And it's interesting that scientists are constantly observing that galaxies and stars and so forth are expanding outward from us. And to me, that's really interesting. Now, they've got ways of trying to explain that and trying to explain kind of the universe as a bubble. So no matter what part you're in, everything's expanding away from you. It doesn't matter where you are. Or the Earth and our solar system was the center of creation. You know, that could be, to me, that makes perfect sense, given the fact that God created the Earth first, before he created everything else. And so certainly everything's expanding away from us because we're the center of creation. Now, to some people that's an arrogant thing to say. And yet, here on the fourth day of creation, this is exactly what God did. That's the daily devotional for you today. Just something I thought about, and I was reading that article and just kind of giggling to myself how often God creates the simple to confound the wise. Whether God is actively continuing to do this, using his providence, using his whatever power he chooses to use to kind of mess with scientists and whatnot, or if this is all stuff he set into effect in creation, knowing one day this is going to confound the wise. Regardless, it's somewhat amusing. I say amusing to see, to a sense. In a sense, it's also sad, also, but it's amusing to see sometimes scientists have to backtrack and eat their words and say, "Okay, we thought we knew, but we really don't." The sad part of it is that so many people fall right in line, though. Okay, so for decades they preached the Big Bang hypothesis, and people follow right along. Okay, here's another reason not to believe in God. We have an explanation now for the beginning of everything. Well, nothing's really going to change. They're going to backtrack, and eventually the Big Bang hypothesis probably will get shelved, or at the very least tweaked to a point to attempt to incorporate all this new data they're receiving. And it'll just be another form of another vehicle for which people who don't want to believe in God anyway to continue to do so. It's not any different than anything else. All right, our next day of the devotional, Lord willing, will be on Monday at 6:30. Hope to see you all then. Thank you, everybody.